Hi, everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of Vox Vomitus. I am your host, horror novelist Jennifer Ann Gordon, and I am joined once again, as always, by my two Vox Vomitus vixens, author Allison Martine, author of the Bourbon Books, and author Trisha Ridinger McKee, author of the Beyond series, as well as a brand new Christmas collection called All I Want for Christmas, which is a collection of 11 heartwarming stories. Is that correct,
Yes.
Trisha? Okay.
Yes, for the most part.
The audience now knows that I am not a Christmas fan, so I was like, heartwarming? Is it heartwarming? Are those the words? So thank you, everybody, for joining us. We have an amazing guest today, Miss Natalie Zina Walschots. Zina, like the princess, the warrior princess. She is the author of the new hit novel, Hench. So, Natalie, welcome to our show.
My goodness, thank you so much for having me. I
Oh.
am super amped to be here.
Are you amped because I said you could swear and drink?
Yes.
Okay.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. It's like, sorry, this will keep happening, by the way, throughout this interview.
Yeah. I was like, what is that?
Cats constantly just everywhere. There are 5 of them in this house, so the odds of one like flying through the background are 100%.
And
but whatever's behind your head right now is not a cat, right? That's just
no. This is just a fur that I have draped over my office chair for dramatic effect.
Not a cat.
Yeah, no.
I feel like a live stream is not complete until a cat walks across the screen and shows you know,
the butthole.
Yeah, the entire
butthole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll try and keep the actual butthole off the screen, but no promises.
Look, we're still waiting for that version of Cats where the buttholes are back.
Oh, gosh.
I will 2 minutes in. Sorry, guys.
I feel like this
2 minutes. No, you're right.
2 minutes in, and we've said butthole more times than I said anal glands when we talked to James Rollins. So, world record, everybody.
Woo! All right. I'm so glad I could be here for this moment. This is so touching.
It is. See, I didn't want to cry.
Too late.
Natalie, tell us about and tell our viewers about your novel Hench, and just about yourself in general, because I read kind of your bio, your CV is incredible. And you're
very weird. No, that's fair. I make video games for a living ? Right now, which is super fun and very cool. I also make small live action role play games and some like indie tabletop RPG kind of stuff, and a lot of other things that are called experiences, which is like, we don't know what this is. Is it an ARG? Is it just weird ? So I do a lot of that kind of thing now. I have several previous lives, including experimental poet and heavy metal journalist. And, there's kind of a slider that goes in between those two things.
Yeah.
And Hench is my first novel, third book, but first novel. It follows the life and career of a young henchwoman as she sort of starts out as one of the downtrodden and often very mistreated employees of Supervillains. She's picking up a lot of temp work on sort of the eviler end of the superpowered spectrum. After and like a lot of us who've been exposed to the gig economy is very familiar with being disposable. Of course, when your boss is a supervillain, that means a slightly different thing. She gets severely injured on the job and sort of starts to take a more serious and definitely personally invested look at what the cost of superheroes and superheroic activities are on the communities those heroes are ostensibly there to support and protect. And she discovers that it's quite bad, actually, and that sort of sets her off on her path to becoming someone better and more evil. And
she becomes fab, doesn't she?
I think she becomes extremely awesome. I've been told a lot that it's a morally gray novel, which yes. I think is like, and it is. It 100% is. It's sort of like a long extended trolley problem with like a lot of swears and body horror, and some pretty profoundly misunderstood science in there too. But it's for sure she makes a series of questionable and increasingly difficult decisions under often very terrible circumstances. And it was really important that the Anna as a protagonist be somebody who was trying to do what she felt was the right thing in very bad situations, which didn't always mean a good thing, whether that's capital G good or, you know, sort of out of the goodness of her heart or any kind of interpretation like that, that it was, she was really kind of doing what she felt was the only correct thing to do when things got super fucked up. So there are definitely a lot of moments in the book that have been described as very difficult or morally questionable. But I'm very ride or die with her. So I have a very deep insight and therefore a very deep sympathy into all the decisions that she makes.
I love that so much. As a fellow writer, and I think we all write. I love morally gray characters. I love the ones that you're like, are they doing the right thing? I think they're not really. So I love that. And you also have to know, your book is being obviously compared a lot to The Boys, which I love. I read the comics a million years ago when they came out. I love the show.
I did too. Yeah, I read them when they were coming out as well, and like I'm very flattered.
In a couple minutes, but I wanted to say my favorite thing in the past couple days has been looking up different descriptions of your book that usually start with "It's the boys meets blah blah blah." So I won't tell you Allison's because I'll let her do it. But I really loved. One said it was The Boys meets Perks of a Wallflower. One
that's
was like
good.
Boys plus. I can't remember what my favorite was. Boys plus meets Office Space, which I was just like
extremely good. I have a deep and profound love for Office Space.
So, and Allison, you had a really good one too that I thought to myself, I wish I had said that.
Well, for me, I said it's The Boys meets Dr. Horrible, because they're definitely, since we're coming out. I mean, yes, Anna she's a temp hench, but she's also starting on the bad side of the room. Like, we never even find out how Anna ends up there, but she starts there. And yes, there's a lot of moral gray stuff. So I was definitely feeling some Dr. Horrible, some Bad Horse going on there. Some of the names like Electric Eel. Honestly, there were points where my brain was trying to keep track of names in your book, names from The Boys, names from Dr. Horrible. At some point, they were just kind of like, Super Collider, I mean, Homelander. Well, is it the same person? It's not, but they're all kind of blonde, punchable thing at one point. Once you made him blonde, I just was.
It's like, yep. There it is. There's the face. You can see it. That Tom Brady-ass, just extremely throw a brick at it nonsense. Yeah.
You know, I'm going to probably lose some fans here because I'm from New England, but fuck Tom Brady.
Seriously, he's the worst. He's just so bad. Like,
I've weirdly hated him since he married Giselle. Because in my brain,
oh God, I blocked that out. Oh no,
I was gonna marry Giselle somehow, and then Tom Brady did, and I was like, "Fuck him."
Yeah, I'm sorry for your loss.
In New England are like turning it off right now.
I see.
So you said you read the Boys comic books. You are probably you're invested in the comic book community.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've read and collected comics since I was a kid. It's something I love profoundly, and I at least in part Hench is kind of a love letter to that, like, and my deep investment in that culture and in all of those fandoms.
I love that so much. I owned a comic shop for multiple years.
Oh, sweet.
And so I also love comics. What was the comic that got you fully invested when you were a kid? Like, what is the reason you became a comic book person?
So, like, I grew up in like a tiny hellmouth small town in southern Ontario. I live in Toronto now, but very, very close to Detroit. Just, across the water and more tool and die, and healthcare, but still pretty weird. So there was not a lot there for me. You know, at the same time, I was kind of buying any sci-fi and fantasy novel that like came to the single crappy mall bookstore that I had. Anything with an orb on the cover, definitely bought. Like somebody holding an orb very seriously. And most of the comics that were available to me were like Spawn and Witchblade, which like no diss to Spawn and Witchblade, but there's like a thing happening there.
It's that whole early Image Comics culture where the people and the women especially weren't anatomically possible.
Yeah, there was a lot of questionable anatomy for sure, but there was a little arc in Spawn and the like Angela arc that Neil Gaiman wrote, which is how I ultimately found Death and how I found Sandman, and it was when I read the Death graphic novel collections that I was like, this is something incredible is happening here. Like some really extraordinary storytelling is happening here and is possible in this medium. So those were the ones that got me hooked forever, and I'm still here.
So Neil Gaiman had part of your entry point there because of the Sandman. Okay, so I think Neil Gaiman is the gateway drug because he also,
I think that's fair. Yeah.
We watched an episode of Doctor Who that he wrote and had not watched Doctor Who before, but we're like, well, Neil Gaiman wrote it, hooked. So he seriously is the gateway drug. He gets you into graphic novels, gets me into Doctor Who, and then you can't look back.
Yeah. Yes. Then you're in. Then you're invested. Now it's like, now I have all of Transmetropolitan over here. Haha.
My God. I know. When I was little, I was obsessed with, there was a comic from the 70s that they later reprinted in the late 80s called ElfQuest by Richard.
I know ElfQuest. I had so much ElfQuest. Absolutely.
So that, for some reason, ended up on the shelves of like my local grocery store.
Oh my God, it's so violent. It's like that's like somebody saw like these are the original Ninja Turtles comics. These will be great for kids, like set in the front. Oh my God, that's incredible. They're so hyper violent. There's like a surprising amount of elf sex I seem to recall.
So much elf sex. Well. So I remember that I think it was like issue 4. It had like a pinkish color on the cover, and I bought it, and that was the first time I saw the elf sex, and the elves were nude and they were gorgeous, and I remember reading it like going, oh, my parents are gonna kill me if they know that I'm basically reading porn. Elf porn.
Elf porn, the best kind of porn. I definitely wasn't supervised when it came to media consumption, like at all, like zero whatsoever. I remember like very vividly, I forget even what I was reading, but I was reading some horror novel and I was like 9 or 11 or something like that. And my dad was like, what are you reading? And I showed him and he like read something. And it's like some like just like splatter punk nonsense probably. And he's like, should I be letting you read this? And I said something like, well, I'm 240 pages in and we're already here. So what are you gonna do? And he's like, fair enough. Hands it back and just carries along his way. It's like, well,
love it.
Like this is all. I've already missed the boat on this one. So just carry on. I guess.
She's gone. Yeah, so I went from ElfQuest as a kid, and then I kind of gave up comics for, maybe 4 or 5 years until Sandman. And that was I saw the return to comics, and it was because I had some amazing weirdo friends, and they just kept saying, you remind me of Death. And I was like, I don't even know what that means, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That is what I've always wanted to
flattering.
Hear. Yeah. And then I read it and I was like, oh, that was actually a compliment, not like you look like the Grim Reaper or you just look like Death.
Yeah. The different
Take a vitamin.
The idea, the concept. No, very, very specific thing. Yeah. Death as a character is super important to me as well. Like just as a thing that is sort of universally feared and considered evil, that's just sort of spunky and happy to be there and deeply, deeply wise and profoundly caring and empathetic as the ocean, but also is just like cheerful. And that like that kind of simple cheerfulness and really profound cheerfulness, but like combined with power, it was kind of one of the first times I'd seen that. That it wasn't it didn't have to be like all like flames, disembodied voices, whatever. I'm the Oz great and terrible, like a different kind of presence and power as possible. And that was kind of one of the first times I saw that.
My gosh, that's brilliant. And now I'm going to back that up with like a really like vapid question.
Oh, please.
When you went to Comic Cons, did you go to Comic Cons? I'm assuming you
100%. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you treated like a goddess because of because you game, you're into comics, you're female, you're hot? Like,
Thank you.
Were you subjected to that? Like, it's a lady comic book girl, like with the hands. And
that's a
that's a loaded
that's a complicated question. I have done my best to avoid any kind of what I would consider romantic attention, like at all in my entire life. I find it deeply troubling. Most of my life, I've sort of been like just safely assumed I'm like the Phantom of the Opera, and just avoiding all of this is probably for the best. That has not prevented me from having the worst string of exes in the entire universe, obviously, because gestures broadly at myself. But yeah, it's a weird thing happens for sure. It happened to me a lot while when I started like going to every metal show in the world and then writing about metal a lot, which is, hey, there's a girl here, often feels a lot like you're not supposed to be here. It's kind of the like shadow side of that. So that never sat super well with me. And even if it was like very positive attention and a like, wow, it's so like cool to like, no, it should be very boring that I'm here. It should be unremarkable.
It should be commonplace.
Right. Yeah, like no one should be commenting about this, that I have entered the room. So that always felt really like uncomfortable to me. There was always like a pretty deep sense of discomfort, which I started writing about a lot. And that's definitely not something that's like dissipated so much as I feel like I have better armor for dealing with it. Like I think I do a pretty good job of exuding fairly hostile vibes in any sort of unfamiliar situation. Like I try and do a pretty good job of radiate. I'm kind of like just like a radiant aura of
you channel resting bitch face and
not just I have no time for this whatsoever. The eyeliner helps. It really does. It's like the way that that bugs that are brightly colored are like, I'm poisonous. There's something about like this particular wing that's like, do not.
Yeah. See, that's been my problem the whole time. I can't do an eyeliner.
No, you gotta wing that shit out. Wing sharp enough to cut a man. then it goes a bit better.
I love that.
One of my good friends has hit a lot of the Comic Cons and things like that, and she is considerably younger than me and drop dead gorgeous. And everyone approaches her like, "Oh, you like to play D&D? Let me show you how." And she's like, dude, I DM, I know how to do this. But they look at her, presume incompetence, and want to just form her and bring her under her wing. So I feel like there is that whole balance of, oh, well, a woman is welcome, but she must not know what she's doing here.
Right. Welcoming. Totally. Yeah. I think, and I get the impulse that comes from coming from a positive place of like, I want, instead of like, you don't belong here, or like that kind of like lecherous, like, hey, a girl is here, I'm very excited about this for no reason whatsoever. There's like the next tier in the like self-actualization evolution is I'm so glad you're here, let me introduce you, which is like, there is like a ton of positivity there, but you're definitely presuming this person doesn't know what they're talking about. And you might, it is no one's job to educate anybody, like obviously, like baseline. However, like I can totally see how somebody with every good intention in the world, like just hasn't gotten there in their brain yet, that like this is what I am implying by what I'm trying to do is like a a welcoming impulse.
Right, because you can guarantee that another person walks in next to her who is male, and the same offer would not be granted. It would be implied.
Even if that person like actually desperately needs the help,
exactly.
Right? Like, so there's definitely some like calibration that needs to be done there. And it's for sure discouraging to have like that kind of incompetence presumed or inexperience presumed in a lot of spaces where you don't necessarily like look like people expect you to, or there's sort of like a dominant hegemony that you don't necessarily fit into. And like for sure it can be like way worse for people of color. It can be, like much worse for people with visible disabilities. There are a lot of like complicating intersectional factors going on there too. But yeah, it's that like it all is kind of a part of the same like. Again, it should be boring. Like I just want it to be boring and unremarkable. That would be really, really great. And I think that like that's that. There's also like things that. Like it is nice to be welcomed if it is for the correct reasons, which is like, I want to check in and make sure that you feel good about this. And like, what can I, like, do you need nothing? Do you need a lot of help? Is there, it's somewhere in between? Like there's, I think that, that what welcoming somebody to a space means probably just needs a little bit more active consideration.
And how it can be complicated. It can be different for certain people and different for the situation.
Well, and just the presumption. Sure. I used to work as an attorney, and there'd be times I would show up and people would be like, "Oh, you're the court reporter," and I'd be going, "No, I'm waiting for my client. I'm the attorney, and I'm here to take the deposition. Where do I go?" But the presumption was young female must be here as the court reporter, couldn't possibly have already passed the bar. And yes, this was a while ago. But again, I looked basically the same as I do now. But the presumption is incompetence instead of, belongs in this space, equal member on the same playing field, deserves respect.
Yeah, totally. And like I know a lot of I'm aging out of this a little bit, but like a lot of I and a lot of my immediate friends have definitely had the experience where we've shown up to teach in a space, whether it's like a university or even a high school setting, and been challenged as though we are a student, and it's like no, I'm here to teach the creative writing module. I don't need to go to detention. Thank you. A different thing is happening, and you like usually they become more like the spider problem. They become more scared of you than you are of them, and it's sort of like everything kind of equalizes itself. But that
because they're probably already scared that they seemed like a pedophile. Just
it's like, oh god, everything.
Oh no, because like, did I say that in a flirty way? Or
no, oh no,
go to jail?
Yeah, so it's I think just assuming that your assumptions are wrong and approaching any new interaction with curiosity rather than judgment is probably the right call in all of these situations.
Yes.
It's interesting that you brought these up because I think there are moments in the book when Anna kind of encounters both of these. There was a moment when some superheroes show up to work, or where she's working on a diplomatic mission, and they are just complete asshats to her. Or one is in particular, and she definitely tries to set him on fire with her mind repeatedly throughout this interaction. And I really wanted it to stand out in its kind of like casual, gross misogyny from the way that she is typically treated, because it was very important to me that Anna be seen as competent and trustworthy and be reacted to as though she is competent and trustworthy. And that is kind of like the baseline that all of the people who matter treat her that way, including the people who hate her, by the way. Like, absolutely. And the only people who do not, it is obvious that is a grave mistake and stupid and is and an entirely a reflection of their own poor character and bad choice. But it was really important that like that kind of baseline, like, please listen to me, like, please trust me, not be a part of her character development and her narrative. Not that those things don't exist and not that that's not important, but I wanted to show a kind of utopian vision, perhaps, of like, this is what happens when you do trust somebody.
Right.
Like, this is what happens when someone is regarded as competent, when their work is appreciated, when like they as a person are appreciated, and it's not something I have to fight against all of the time in order to get anything done, like what is possible. So I really worked on showing that as much as possible, with relatively rare exceptions and only for very specific effect.
I know exactly which scene you meant, and that scene was priceless, and how they react to her, and even how the other people in the room react to the person who is definitely out of line. It basically set this standard of, no, we don't talk to people like that, and that isn't how we treat people, and what is wrong with you? And I think we've all had those points in life where we want to look at somebody and go, what is wrong with you? And we got to live that out in that scene. So thank you, Natalie. We appreciated that.
I'm glad I could give you this gift. It comes from a real place, I promise.
I'm sure it does. I'm going to toss this over to Trisha. Do you have any questions for Natalie?
Well, I do, and it's tied into all of this. I mean, do you find that it sort of carries over to your writing? Because I know I write different genres, and I know, Jennifer, you know, I've heard this said about both of us, where, oh, you guys write horror? Wow, like, I haven't known women to do that. And to me, it's like, writer. Really?
Okay, but like there are so many amazing women writing horror, like that's
right.
Like,
and
if you're like a lady has written a scary thing, like, I'm sorry, what century are you from? Like, please get into your dirigible and return there. Like, what is happening? Like,
right.
Like, it's so, you have to be so like willingly blind to like like just ignore all of these incredible contributions, right? Like that is definitely a failure of that person, and not the earth giving them incredible gifts of content.
That's a reflection on them, not so much you. But if anything, I would say some of these people, it may be not that women are writing horror, but they're looking at your personalities and going, what? These sunshiny, perky people are writing these dark things. Right. And then Jen does that face and I go, do you even know either of them?
Yeah. So is that what you
want to draw from?
It's like,
they're evil. They're not, but it's neither one of them are vapid, and neither one of them are the type who are like, well, all I can write about is puppies and sunshine because that's all I know.
Yeah. So can you like reiterate your question, Trisha? Just I want to make sure that I answered it fully.
Sure. I mean, do you have anyone say to you about your book that they're surprised that, you know, you're female writing about this kind of stuff? Because I think sci-fi goes, you know, along the same lines as horror, where a lot of people think it's a man kind of world there when it comes to that genre.
Sure, a very specific kind of vibe. I don't think anyone has. I think mercifully for them, no one has approached me directly to say like, "Wow, I'm really surprised you wrote this."
Oh, you're lucky.
So I'm. If it has happened, it has not happened in front of me, for which I am extremely grateful. I have noticed with great glee the number of people who have said, like, anytime somebody says that was a bit much for me, please be aware that especially in later parts of the book, some things happen that are very difficult. Few things fill my shriveled little apple core of a heart with light than somebody saying like, woo, that right. A couple of times my partner has like read something I've written and looked at me and said like, I have to sleep next to you. like why did you do this? Like, if I have to have intrusive thoughts now, so do all of you. So there's definitely I've experienced like the fun part of that, which was like, wow, I was not expecting that to happen. But I've not encountered anyone daring to say that to my face. I don't expect that to last necessarily, because I am for sure like 5'2" and sound like an animated bird.
We all are.
We're the
Yeah.
5'2" club.
Yeah, so 5'2" with shoes on. Yeah. So and yeah,
We're
definitely
fun
sound.
sized.
Yeah, exactly. Just like just
candy
travel
bar.
sized. Hooray. So yeah, so I can understand, I guess, why someone would be so profoundly wrong, but I look forward to it. That'll be fun.
Right?
I feel like one of my best compliments was actually from my very recent husband, when the other night he was laying in bed next to me and he was reading my book that just came out, and he read a very specific part, and then he read it out loud, and then he looked at me and he said, "That is the most horrifying sentence that I can even imagine."
And it's like,
and I was like,
you.
"Really?" And he was just like,
so...
and he was like, I just like, and he said the same thing. He's like, "I have to go to sleep. I'm gonna like see that in my head." And I'm like,
I have to go to bed now.
I was like, but like it was gross enough to make you like feel sick.
Really?
Awesome.
So
okay, later I want to know what sentence that was, because I finished your book, so I'd like to know.
It was I'll send it to you later.
Tell me later.
I think it was
No
it keyed into some specific phobias of his.
But it was
that
might be Roman.
Okay.
Allison, do you have any questions for Natalie?
Well, some of my questions I'm going to have to ask off the air, because I have some specific questions that are probably spoilers, and I don't want people to go, "Wait, what?" and be confused. So I will save some of those. But I think the question I had, dealing with even the genre. So would you it Hench is science fiction? Because to me, it didn't feel science fiction, and I mean that as a compliment as someone who loves science fiction. How would you describe it?
No, that's a great question, and I kind of don't know. So I wasn't trying to write like a book of sci-fi or even a book of superhero fiction, whatever the crap that means. And like
where does that even go in Barnes and Noble?
Like I don't even know where to put this. But I've seen it described.
Where does this go on the shelf?
I don't know, and I kind of love that. Like I've seen it described in a lot of different ways. I've seen like a lot of romance review sites have super liked it, which makes me extremely thrilled. Just because I'm
confused, having read the book. Why? Okay, go on. Sorry.
Yeah, no. There's a bit of a like perhaps slow burn that could perhaps go a place in the future, and like I've read a lot of fan fiction in my life, so for sure like I'm ready to like buckle in for a 600,000 word slow burn, kids. So like do not get prepared for like a quick resolution
when they both work in a coffee shop. And
yeah. I just want there to be trash fan fiction so bad, and I mean trash not in a dismissive way, but in a like way so full of like profound love. I want this so badly. Please put your secret stuff on AO3. I want to see it very much.
Yes.
No, but seriously, when
that's the dream.
You're traditionally published, and so I'm assuming you had to pitch this. Did they ask you what genre this was, or did you even say anything other than contemporary fiction?
So I was super lucky. I have an amazing agent who I had before I had the manuscript completed. So I was able to kind of like bring it to him and be like, question mark. And he's like, I don't know. Let's just send it a bunch of places. Like I'm gonna think of people that I think will really appreciate this individually. And he found an amazing home for it, and like like David Pomerico and I like immediately like hit it off like a house on fire. Like he got it immediately. He was super supportive, like deeply invested, understood what I was trying to do. So it wasn't really until we were writing the sales copy that we're like, so how
do we sell it?
So we did I think generally like speculative fiction is sort of the thing that everybody else, but just because it's like the broadest possible umbrella to kind of put it under, and I'm kind of like really pleased to let people describe it the way that they want to, because some readers have said like very authoritatively they think it's science fiction, or like very authoritatively that they feel like it's more of a like urban fantasy but not about fairies, and or like that it is a sort of like either or just straight up horror, or like or romantic horror, or like horror sci-fi, or like I think the Publishers Weekly review had it under all three categories. It's like sci-fi, fantasy, and horror. Like it's just like all of them. There we go.
That's a great place to be.
Great. That's great. Like I'm super thrilled, and I'm really kind of I'm very glad it's hard to categorize, because I think it ends up some really interesting places because of that. And I think some places that may not have read it otherwise have,
and
right?
that's because what I was going to say, because I know there are people who are literary snobs and are going to dismiss certain things based on a category preconception. And I would say, as much as I love science fiction, for people who don't like certain things about science fiction, they're not going to find any of those things in your book. And certain people who are oh, I can't handle this, or I'm not really into this because I can't connect to it. You're starting with a person who's sitting there on her computer trying to determine whether or not she can afford to not go take a job because she's down to her last cup and noodle. If you can't relate to that, we're probably not friends.
It's not a biography, is all I'm going to say.
I'm just saying it starts in a super relatable place. And as much as I love science fiction and as much as I love fantasy, a lot of those books start and you're in this galaxy or this fantasy universe, and you've got to start building a connection to your reader there. You start with a person who could literally be your roommate, your friend down the street, your sister, whoever. She's very relatable, even if I'm pretty sure I still can't say her last name. Is it Tremelove?
Tremedlove is sort of how I had always imagined it, but by all means, whatever. Like the point is, everybody gets it wrong, which again, coming from a real place.
Natalie, are you Russian?
I am.
Are you really?
Half my family is Russian, the other half is like Dutch and Scandinavian.
Okay,
so all the cultures that don't see sunlight or have at all. So
I get it. I get it. I know some good Russian phrases that my now husband taught me, that he thought, he told me I was saying, "Thank you for inviting me to your home," that he wanted me to say to his parents.
Oh no.
I didn't, thank God. But after we turn this off, then I'll say the phrases.
It's another more different phrase.
It's a different phrase than "thank you for inviting me to your home."
That's amazing. I'm sure they would have appreciated it, actually.
Many years later, I told his father, I was like, "This is what your son taught me." And he laughed and went, "Oh, Roma," and like kind of punched him. Like, no. I'm just going to say it involves the words ass and mouth.
Ooh, so it's like a human centipede kind of scenario. That's great.
So we're getting into the body horror now, because
absolutely.
That's the segue. Oh gosh, we're running out of time. I feel like, Natalie, we have to have you back for another episode where we just discuss
anytime. This was a blast. Absolutely.
Before we go, I did want to ask. Okay, so this kind of ties into my question about if your book straddles genres or defies the genres. What are you working on now, and would it fit in the same stereotype, or are you not writing? Are you doing something because you have like 75 careers going on at once? So,
right, I don't like sleeping very much. It's like, I guess, passe or whatever. So I'm working on a bunch of things. I'm writing what has been described as solar punk. So it's like it's a near future video game. It's with a company called Peculiar Path that is set in a near future where a aircraft carrier and a cruise ship and a bunch of other kind of like ocean debris have been kind of collected into a island vessel ?
And they have a baby?
It exists as sort of an independent city state. So it's a bit like Waterworld, except with like restorative justice.
Did you, Natalie, did you read China Miéville's The Scar?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's what I'm picturing. I'm picturing
it's nice, but like it's like there's wholesome. It's mostly wholesomeness, which is like a very lovely turn for
Nothing run by vampires.
No, nothing currently run by vampires. No intense or unconsensual body modification. Like it's just very like, you know, there's
a lot of that in the Scar.
There's a lot of that in the Scar.
So like the Scar meets a prairie romance. Is that what we're soft pitching it as? Like
I'm not pitching anything that.
Like no, but also
yes.
Not yet. No.
No, but not no.
Yeah.
And Natalie, is this a book or did you say this is a video game?
This is a video game. Yeah,
I would play that.
Yeah. So I'm very excited about that. I'm working on that quite a bit. My friend Max Lander and I are writing a TTRPG, tabletop RPG system where instead of combat, the primary mechanic is around relationships and like you just. Whereas in kind of like D&D and other systems like that, everything involving like numbers and stats and rolling is your combat, and you just like describe your relationships or like what happens between characters. And this is a system where you just tell me how the combat turns out and then like deal with the maintenance of all of your like very complicated relationships.
I want that.
I'm very excited about that.
An RPG meets the Ungame smushed together.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
And that's the game I want.
For sure. It's a game I want too. And it seems like when I find something I want that doesn't exist, I guess you just have to make it, right? Like that's kind of what all our jobs are.
Well, when you have the skill sets you do, then you can. For me, I would
you just make things. It's super weird. And I have been like exploring more henchiverse stuff. Like I don't think that this story is done. I think that there's a lot more. There's no I do not know what the future holds. I sincerely hope it includes more books set in this universe. That would be really, really rad. But I think there's more. And so I'm definitely making notes toward that and seeing where that goes.
I love this so much. We will keep chatting after the show. Everybody who's been watching, thank you for watching. Thank you, Allison.
Thank you so much.
Trisha. Thank you, Natalie. Thank you to the authors on the Air Global Radio Network for being our host. Thank you to Roman Sorotin for being our producer, Pam Stack for being our executive producer. Next week, we will be at a different time on Wednesday. We will be at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I believe. We will be much later for that for our host, who is CJ Cook, author of The Nesting. She is in Scotland. We're still finalizing the time. So please stay tuned next week. Even if you can't catch us live, you can see us on the replay. And then later that night, next Wednesday night at 8 p.m., it's the Authors on the Air Book of the Year Awards. Please tune in for that. I am up for Book of the Year, along with a lot of people who are very incredibly talented. And I am just humbled to be nominated. So thank you again. I cannot read that comment, but Allison, you have your glasses on.
Yeah, I do. Elisa von Schimmelman says, thank you, Natalie. You are so witty, relatable, and fun to listen to. So happy I was able to turn in to hear a bit about your creative life. And thank you, as always, Vox Vixens, for creating an enjoyable experience.
Thank you, everybody.
And Elisa says, never underestimate the abilities of the 5'2" crew. Elisa, I don't think you're even 5'2". I'm pretty sure.
Now we need jackets, right? Now we definitely need like girl gang jackets.
They need to be
bedazzled.
Bedazzled.
Just like some drive jackets.
I love it. Yes. So this is, I guess, what we're going to be talking about after the show. So thank you, everybody. We will see you next week at some bat time, some bat channel. I'm not sure, but we will keep you updated.